Had to have high hopes for a living, shooting for the stars when I couldn't make a killing. Didn't have a dime, but I always had a vision, always had high hopes.
Hello everyone, Darth Vegan here from a vegan cafe, The Vibe. Here in Liverpool. Yes, I have I would have had breakfast at the hostel, but the thing is, I overslept. Oh well. To get pretty drunk last night, it's quite late. Oh yeah, no, this is probably supposed to be like that. Wow. This here is a Eggs Royale. So, with a vegan egg and alternative salmon made of carrot. Nice muffins. Roast muffin. It doesn't really taste of egg, but it still tastes nice. That's all that matters, really, isn't it? That is nice. Oh, but it is so cozy in here. I mean, this chair. Starters. Good smoke. Tell you what, that kind of tastes like salmon. I mean, what do I remember? I'm about 7 years vegan, so yeah. Right, so
Then again, yeah, you can be good then. You've had
I'm at the conference venue now, and heading to the Shadow Chancellor speech, which leaves. To be quick, just talking to one of the boss people at home, because apparently people of her women of her generation were, you know, they were a bit disadvantaged when it came to like pensions and that. So that's kind of what that's about. But yeah, let's go. And no, to be honest, I did learn quite a bit from her. But yeah, let's go to the Shadow Chancellor speech.
To stand up to them 1 year in, what chance do you give them 5 years? Be in no doubt. The biggest risk to Britain's economy is 5 more years of the Conservative Party. New ideas of how we build That starts to understand the world of practice. The exhaustion of conservative ideas does not give us the freedom to push through programs of attack on our present economic reality. For granted, those people who we seek to represent. Change will only be achieved on the basis of ideas. Working people like yourself otherwise. Because when you play fast and loose with the public prices, you put up this when the prices of food and energy and housing soar, it is working people that pay that price. Like the man that I met in Sky, a mental health who had moved back home in her life for 5 years with her young family, saved a deposit to buy a home of her own. Only to find that when she was on the cusp of fulfilling that dream, for all that sacrifice, the mortgage cost she could face outstripped into our National Health Service instead. The press conference, if you make your home in Britain, you should pay your taxes here too, and with Labour, you will. And another choice. In my first budget as Chancellor of the Exchequer, I will end the tax reform, which exempts private schools paying VAT at business rates. And conference, we will put that money into helping the 93% of our children who are in our state schools. And I tell you, if Rishi Sunak wants to fight on this, if the party that has herded our children into water cabins while our school roofs crumble wants to fight about who has the most aspiration for our children, then I say, bring it on. And we get back every penny of taxpayer money that they can. The press conference, that money belongs in our NHS, it belongs in our police, it belongs in our schools. And let me tell you, we want that money back. We are ready to serve, we are ready to lead. Conference, we are ready to rebuild Britain.
£100 for every household in Britain. But we know too that asking businesses to do all the heavy lifting while government steps back is not an option. As our competitors understand, there is a role for government in encouraging and de-risking investment in new and growing industries. So we will provide catalytic investment through a new national wealth fund. Financial responsibility means knowing when not to spend, but it also means making sure that when you invest, get the bang for your buck. So we will set that new national wealth fund a target. For every pound of investment that we put in, we will leverage in 3 times as much private investment. And conference, be in no doubt. No matter what political games the Tories are willing to play over our energy transition, no matter how willing they are to ignore the warnings of businesses, investors and trade unions, no matter how many times they put short-term political calculations over the security and the prosperity of the British people, Labour will make the long-term decisions and invest in British industry, driving down bills and creating new jobs. It is time we built the homes our young people need. We will raise the stamp duty surcharge on overseas buyers to get this Britain building. Conference, Labour is the party of the builders, not the blockers. Labour is the party of economic growth. And it is now beyond doubt. It is Labour that is the party of home ownership in Britain today. Cost of living. Finally, conference, with Labour we will have a genuine living wage. post of Chancellor of the Exchequer has existed now for 800 years. In that time, not one single woman held that post. Conference, when we next meet, I intend to address this hall as Britain's first female Chancellor of the Exchequer.
Anyway, vegan plowmans. Yeah, it's nice fun. But the internet just doesn't want to work. To be honest, it took me long enough to just get 3G. I still don't have 5G. Guarantee there's nothing to do with where I am. Because where I am is usually perfect. Try to. Because it's a big city. We're in the middle of a big city. Well, kind of the middle. More the docks actually, but still. It should work.
We can take from the previous Labour government, and how can we learn from that as we get closer to government, but also how does Labour respond to the Conservative attack cycles of education and the culture war that they're currently perpetuating. But before we get on to that reflection, I would like to pass over to Angela to share more on the Labour government's last achievements.
Well, thank you very much, Lily. I don't know, you sound pretty hoarse. So I hate to tell you, but it's only Monday.
I know.
Right, so maybe gargling stuff next.
Yes.
It's a great pleasure to be at the meeting, co-sponsored by Stonewall. And Stonewall only exists really because of the last time we had a Conservative government that decided it was going to play games with LGBT people's lives and use their entire power as a government to turn resentments on a particular section of society. When I was growing up in the 1980s, this was all gay people, and for those of you who don't understand quite how far we've managed to come since the last Labour government equalised a lot of the law in this area, have a look back at the archives of certain newspapers. You'll be able to guess which ones I'm talking about, and look at the coverage that you used to have of LGBT people, particularly gay men in this instance, and see how far at least we've come. Pretty similar wording in Malawi. Pretty similar wording, and this is coordinated and funded by American right-wing evangelicals. And if we look at what's happening in the States, and I'm going to run through this quickly because you might hear something quite familiar about what's happening in the States, in the discourse that certain people are promulgating in our country. Since the beginning of the year in the United States, there have been well over 400 pieces of legislation introduced at state legislature level in the 50 states of the American Union, which criminalise in some way or put restrictions on trans rights and gay rights. We've seen people burning pride flags, and not only in the United States. We've seen drag being banned from some states in the Union, and those who think that couldn't come over here, have a look at what's been happening outside certain pubs with the drag story time events. We've seen states pass legislation that allow the children who've transitioned to be taken off their parents. We see states that have banned books, ban and burn where have we heard that before? Ban and burn books that deal with LGBT issues, or actually anything else that they don't think is pro their view of what society should be like. So increasing
teachers in a position where they've got to do that. That's not what teachers are there to do. Teachers are there to support every child and young person to thrive, and we all need that support to do it. So please join us in fighting for the future of inclusive education. From a Labour government, if you are able to form a government, form the next government, we want you to be proud to support inclusive education. We want to be proud of completing that circle. We want you to give the support to teachers, the space for them to actually really put this support in place and make sure every child grows up thriving.
Progress, but of course we then also need to be keenly aware that now progress unfortunately is stalling or indeed going into reverse. There's another anniversary that we're near to at the moment, which is 5 years having passed since the launch of Theresa May's LGBT action plan. I think there'll be people in this room who will remember that action plan. Half a decade later, many of its commitments have been dropped. The action plan itself is kind of just completely, it seems, abandoned. It looks now like we're going to have to put into that category of abandoned promises also the promise to end the abhorrent practice of so-called conversion therapy. We were promised a conversion therapy bill in the last Queen's speech, but none has materialised, and it's looking like there's just not going to be enough time now to carry out the pre-legislative scrutiny the government committed to. LGBT plus people, in our view, have waited for too long for a ban. Now it seems they're going to have to wait until the Conservative government is gone to get a ban. Well, Labour will stay the course on this. No ifs and no buts. We need a fully trans-inclusive ban on coercive practices that targets both sexual orientation and gender identity, and we can, of course, bring that in while we're protecting the provision of legitimate counselling and talking therapies. This really shouldn't be difficult, but it seems at the moment like any kind of action for LGBT plus people from government, sadly, is difficult.
An unprecedented 20.4% swing from the SNP to Labour. What it means is there is no SNP MP who can rest easy. A coalition of voters voted for change in Rutherglen last Thursday. It's no wonder the SNP is in total disarray. This time last year, the SNP leadership was Nicola Sturgeon and Ian Blanford, remember them? Now it's Youssef and Flynn. That's the biggest downgrade since Sturgeon moved out of Butte House and into a luxury camper van. But this conference isn't about them, but about what we can offer the country. And I want to focus on the Scotland office. Because after 13 years of incompetent Tory government, it's a shell of what it can be. It involves itself in Scottish public life only when it's after a political fight or the Secretary of State is defending Liz Truss. Conference, if you win the trust of the voters next year, then us, Keir and I, have a different plan. And I believe there should be three broad principles. The first is how we harness Scotland's role in the world. Brand Scotland is such an easy thing to say. From Harris Tweed in the Western Isles through to cutting-edge science in my own constituency, the potential of Scotland is awe-inspiring.
Because that result, which is shaking Scottish politics to the core, is the type of result that Ian Murray, Jackie Bailey and I have been working so hard to achieve. So to our fantastic Shadow Secretary for Scotland, Ian Murray, and to my brilliant Deputy Leader, Dr. Bailey, thank you. On Thursday night, we made history and we changed the face of Scottish politics. The tectonic plates have shifted because the people of Rutherglen Hamilton West have spoken for all of Scotland and sent a message to two failing governments. They want an end to the incompetence, an end to the chaos, an end to the division, an end to the politics which pits community against community, pits Scot against Scot, and puts the status quo before change. And they voted for change, and they voted for a party that will give Scotland its future back. My ministerial team friends, Sarah Jones, Terry McCarthy, Jeff Smith and Alan Whitehead, and it is a pleasure to follow my friend, our brilliant Scottish Labour leader, Anna Sarwar. Friends, we meet here with confidence that there is a spirit of change in the air. We meet here with the conviction that we Labour are on the side of the British people once again. And we meet here with the belief that we can bring the long, dark night of Tory rule to an end. Now, I'm sure like me, you saw the Tories last week. I have to say, watching it even for the Tories, I couldn't believe some of the nonsense they were coming out with. Delusional stuff about 7 billion. They may have talked about banning smoking, but I have to say to you, I was watching it wondering, what on earth are they smoking at that Tory conference? Listening to the Tories, friends, it's clear they just don't get the fundamental struggles people are facing. A deeply painful cost of living crisis, a deeply entrenched economic crisis, and a deeply dangerous climate and nature crisis. But there's a very important lesson. The British people don't want a pound-shop Republican Party. They don't want an energy policy written by Truss and Trump. I've got an idea, friends. Let's send these Tories where they belong. Let's recycle them from government to opposition, and let's chuck them into the 7 sessions of history. Our national welfare will invest alongside the private sector in our ports, in hydrogen, and yes, saving our steel industry and communities. I want to assure you this, we will learn the lessons of the past. Unlike with the Tories, this won't be crumbs of help after change has blown through communities. It's a proper plan to build our future prosperity for every part of Britain. Our British Jobs Bonus, £2.5 billion of public money to direct the tens of billions of private investment to our industrial heartlands, to our coalfield communities, to our coastal communities, to our oil and gas communities. And here's the crucial point, friends. Not simply leaving it to the market, but planning our clean energy future to tackle the inequalities that scar our country. That's the new Britain we can build together. Bring it on. If these Tories want to fight about who can ensure energy independence for our country, we say bring it on. If these Tories want to fight about who can stand up for working people, we say bring it on. And if, after 13 years of failure and 5 prime ministers, these Tories dare to have a fight about who can really change Britain, we say bring it on. We are ready to lead. We are ready to govern. We are ready to change Britain. Thank you very much.
So, I mean, I mentioned at the beginning that the government's target is 2035. It's not as if this is a kind of completely out there proposal to get clean electricity. It's something that there is a consensus between the government and Labour that this country needs to do. I mean, why is it so crucial that it's the power sector that we do this for? We get there first. Well, in 2030, UK will be ahead of any similarly sized economy. So, why is this such an important target? Get 2030, 2035, whatever.
There's so many we've been finding here at conference. I'm sure lots of you have been to other energy events here as well. That the conversation is dominated by jobs and cost of living and opportunity in this country. And I think, just to be clear, the strong ambition that the Labour are showing in sticking to a 2030 target just means that the cheap renewables will be deployed faster, and therefore the benefits will be reaching people much faster.
Solar farm actually looks like. So people might think that solar is a kind of like, it's a thing that everyone understands, and I don't think it is, to be honest with you.
And it's also with the biodiversity net gain plus 10 thing, you know, that's an extra thing that you're requiring, and very few local authorities employ ecologists now. You know, there's all scrabbling around to try to get people to do the environmental impact assessments and to, you know, to then factor into the planning system what the replacement looks like as well.
Okay. A bit of a mixed bag. We now know who all the optimists are. Interesting. It would be good to take a couple more questions. Gentleman in the jacket and pink shirt there.
Hi there. Yeah, I'm very much.
You could say Vivo, I'm away from as well.
Yeah, Jonathan Leake, I'm the energy editor for the East Over. And I think it's a question maybe for Lawrence, but we've heard it's a kind of a debate without real hard numbers. So what I mean by that is, the grid has talked a lot about the multiples of by which you've got to expand the system and so on. But I've never seen, and maybe I've just missed it, any figures for the actual mileage of new cabling and the number of new pylons. And it seems a bit of an empty debate about that. So I wondered if you could fill us in. I know some of it's refurbishing existing cables, but a lot of it is new cables. And they talked about increasing capacity by 5 times what we built in the last 30 years in the next 5. But it's kind of, it means nothing unless you have the real figures.
Viva Giardiniera Pizza at Pizza Express. Which is practically inside the venue. Though not in the secure area. Basically meaning in theory general members of the public. I think most of them will be Labour Party members. Anyway, I mean, I was served by a very beautiful waitress. She's blonde and softly spoken. And yeah. I don't know. I suppose I'll compliment her. Here we go.
Since the establishment of devolution, National Assembly as it was, we have had a mixture of first past the post and proportional representation. I can say throughout that period, we have never had a Labour majority, but for 24 years we have had a Labour government. And it has meant we've been able to work in a cooperation agreement, which we have at the moment on those areas. An example of that cooperation agreement, of course, is you don't have to go every year to try and win a budget. And whereas we wanted for a long time to introduce free school meals, the cooperation agreement, where we have a common interest, we've been able to do it because we know we have the certainty of the budget from year to year. But we are reforming our Senedd. We are increasing it to deal with the additional responsibilities from 60 to 96. And we are eliminating first past the post completely. We will be introducing a closed list system. We will be introducing legislation to introduce statutory gender balance within it as well. We're using the D'Hondt system. It means that every vote will count, because at the moment, if you're in a strong Labour area, your second regional list vote doesn't really matter. You could win 2/3 of the votes and you're still not going to get a Labour representative. So that is, of course, is to explain the system to people. Now, people are already used to part of it because we already have the regional list system. So it's basically extending that and eliminating the first past the post. So that will be the challenge, and it is a really important one that people understand the way the system works, how it's going to operate, and so on. So that's important. But I think we can actually achieve that. But that's the challenge. We of course engage with the Electoral Commission and various bodies as to how we're actually going to promote that. But the reality is, for the Welsh parliamentary elections for 2026, we'll not only have an automatic registration system, but a larger, that pose interesting challenges as well. When compared with the Westminster elections, we actually find we've got a register that is much, much bigger, and if it were to apply to Westminster, we'd probably be entitled to more members of Parliament. That's a slightly different challenge that's there.
For a wider variety of people to come in, to be more honest with citizens about what it means. The challenges are that I think that there'll be a lot of people who will be, before the vote, the first vote under PR, trying to say in the lead up to it, oh, this is just so confusing, the system we had before was so simple. Well, you try going and explaining first past the post to countries with PR, saying it's a simple system. Okay, so you can come second but win, and et cetera, et cetera. But generally speaking, most people think the voting system they use is simple, and the country next door has a bizarre system. It tends to be the way that these things are viewed. So I think, now, after 30 years, New Zealanders know how the MMP, the PR system works, but there was a scare campaign about that, and I've got no doubt that would happen here. Then the other challenge would be immediately afterwards, where a lot of politics would still be staffed by people who were experts at using, understanding, strategizing, maybe even in some cases manipulating the previous system, and so we'll long to return to the previous one.
And start talking about policy.
Great, thank you. I think one of the potential consequences of changing the voting system would be more coalition governments, as we've said. It's less likely that a government would command a large majority like we get under first past the post, and that's fundamentally something that in the UK we're not really used to. We've had one and in recent memory, but one of the things that we looked at in the research we did at the Institute for Government was what knock-on reforms might be necessary to make sure that the UK system can accommodate a different electoral reality and a different parliamentary configuration. And Alex, you were one of the co-authors of those reports. In terms of sort of how governments are formed and how they operate, you touched on a few ideas initially, but what subsequent reforms did you think would be needed to adjust to a different voting system?
Yeah, and I think it's a good question, and who knows, I suppose, is the first answer, which undermine immediately the report that we did, which I shouldn't do, sorry Jess, but I do think we can draw out certain things because, as I said earlier, not the fact of changing to a new voting system, electoral system, but the likely consequences of the governments that would emerge, and, well, actually more accurately, the House of Commons or the House of Representatives that would emerge.
They would work on the basis of achieving either unanimity or near unanimity. A little bit of wiggle room there about exactly what that means, but putting in place from early doors the convention and the culture that actually, for matters to do with Parliament should decide it itself rather than being told by the executive what it should be, even though obviously 100% of the executive also sits in that single chamber, the lower house. But I think by starting off by that process of saying to the new parties and to smaller parties, you've got just as much say in how we organise the mechanics of the functioning of Parliament, the business agenda, etc. It set the right tone for making a distinction in a smaller country between the executive and the legislature, and that really has stood the test of time because it builds up honesty and trust between parties, and then as the characters change, as there's a turnover in political personnel, they inherit those jobs from a predecessor who will say to them the most important thing is to behave responsibly at this committee. So
parliamentary elections, 50% don't vote in Senate elections and 60% don't vote in council elections. We have a real democratic crisis that's there. And one of the reasons is, I think people probably quite rightly they're right when they say my vote doesn't really matter, because they're only talking about this centre bit here because that's the way first past the post works, and basically whatever I say or how I vote doesn't make any difference. So the issue of democratic health and the motivation of people to participate has got to be also about restoring the trust. So I think you have to take electoral reform also within that, because if it doesn't result in more people participating, it might be a bit more representative, but you still have a major democratic crisis. But what I think it does do, it gives you the opportunity to say to people that your vote really does count, and it puts an initiative and onus on the political parties to actually go out and get them. And of course, with automatic registration, we don't have to worry about them being on the register, so you can actually persuade them to turn up and vote as well.
Right, so I am now heading to the beer cellar for a spot of karaoke.
See you later. Good love.
We'll be singing some songs with Hazel back there. Yeah. Here are the people sing songs, I guess.
German beer. Well, about that. Says it's just under a litre, but close enough, also, it took a little while to actually get in. Because my boat simply refuses to work properly. But hey, it isn't until 11 that the karaoke actually starts anyway, so it's fine.
I mean, it was 3 for tenner. So yeah. 3, I wanted to put the litre of Cause maybe you ain't ever gonna feel this way. You ain't ever gonna know me. By the way, this is a Star Martini. So you two can pull over and talk in position. Yes, Prime Minister, but we'll work on that. Until 3 AM, so why not?
boost morale. Anyway, basically my phone died. It's uncharged. Alright, so I've arrived back safe. So yeah, that was quite a fun karaoke. I mean, a bit cut short by the fact that my phone died. Oh well. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, maybe think about subscribing and as well, thank you so much for watching and goodbye.